All right, so I'm going to stand over here for the recording. So there are a few things that I wanted to touch base with you today, and today's focus is going to be kind of more like academic planning and course planning. In the spring meeting, we usually talk more about things like personal statements and letters of recommendation and kind of application-focused things. But in the fall, we're going to keep it mostly around kind of course planning and academic planning. A few announcements first. So obviously you're all aware that we have an election next Tuesday, so a week from today. You all live here, so if you want to be registered to vote here and vote here, you can, all right? If you're gonna vote for back home, you can do that too. Hopefully you've already gotten an absentee ballot or you're making arrangements to travel home to vote in person. Or you can probably vote early. A lot of municipalities are allowing people to vote early, including Menominee. So you can register. If you want to register to vote locally in Menominee, you can do that in person at the clerk's office. So that big building that's right next to where the farmer's market is, right? That's where you can register in person to vote. Or you can register at your polling place on election day, and Stout has a whole voting information page where you can figure out what ward you live in and what your polling place would be. If you are planning on voting by mail in the state of Wisconsin, so the Supreme Court just made a decision yesterday to let stand a Wisconsin rule that your mail-in ballot has to be received by election day at 8 o'clock. So it used to be it had to be postmarked by election day, but if it didn't show up till a couple days later, because as we know, the mail has been a little slow, but they just as of yesterday. So if you can, if you have a ballot that needs to be turned in, if you can go drop it off at one of the drop boxes or in person, that is preferred because we're cutting it a little close now in terms of things getting there through the mail, depending. All right, or you can vote in person early or on election day. And about the election, there's a shortage of poll workers. Usually poll workers, I don't know if you've kind of voted yet, but usually it's retirees, and a lot of those folks don't want to be out and out about among the public right now. So there's a shortage of poll workers. I know my cousin lives in Chippewa County, and they're going to be poll workers. And just as of today, 3 of their poll workers are out due to quarantine. Right? So we have a decrease in people who are willing to do it, and then of the people who are willing to do it, some of them are being pulled out because of quarantine or isolation. So if you are able to work next Tuesday at the polls, Callie Lauerstoff is our City of Menominee, I forget her job title, but I'm sure they'd be delighted to hear from you. I'm going to offer it as extra credit for my classes, but all right. Final announcement. So the Stout Free Health Society, which hopefully you all know about, is having a meeting tonight to help you kind of design your spring schedule and hear from upperclassmen about like, is it too much to take advanced phys and biochem the same semester, right? All those kinds of things about like, you know, learn from their mistakes or from what worked really well from them. So that's this evening at 7:30 over in Price Commons at the Gilbert Creek room. Rachel, do you know where the Gilbert Creek room is? Okay. You'll find it. You'll find it. Okay, good. So that's a really great opportunity to meet other pre-health students and kind of learn from them. So career exploration, right? So this is the really difficult question for lots of us. What do you want to be when you grow up, right? What career do you think you want to head into? And of course, I remember when I was in high school thinking, oh my gosh, I have to know what I want to do the rest of my life because that's going to determine what major I should be in college and that's going to determine which college I want to go to. So like, you know, when I was 17, I was like, I need to know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Well, it didn't really work out that way. So when I was your age and I first went to college, I actually was a double major in elementary education and dance. So I thought I either wanted to be an elementary school teacher or I wanted to dance on Broadway. One or the other, right? They're so close, right? So I went to New York City, went to school there, and then as part of my gen ed requirements, took some science classes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love science. So I was like, I know, I'm going to change, become a physics major so I can become a physics professor someday. Went to my advisor, and my major was in the School of Education. And I had a big scholarship, which is the only way I could afford to go to school there. And so they said, well, we can't guarantee you that you'd keep the same financial amount of your scholarship if you transferred to the College of Arts and Sciences. So I was like, okay, well, I can't do that. So then I changed my major to science education, and I taught high school algebra and physics in East Harlem for a year. And I was like, I don't think this is what I want to do. And then I went to medical school, and then I did residency in family practice at the University of Vermont. I did medical school in New York City at Mount Sinai, and went into family practice, worked in family practice for a couple of years, liked it, hated it, went and switched and worked in college health at Cornell University for about 8 years, but I really wanted to teach. And so about 8 years ago, we moved here. And so now I teach here, and I do a little bit of clinical medicine at Student Health Services, and I do pre-health advising. So like I changed my career several times, and I may still yet, right? So it's okay not to know, and it's okay to change your mind, right? So if you're like, I don't totally know what I want to do, like that's okay. And there's probably lots of things in your life that you could enjoy doing, right? Some people know, and that's great. But if you aren't totally sure, like that's okay too. So of course, this is no news to you, right? You want to think like, what are the things that you like, right? What are the things that you enjoy doing? Do you like working with people, or would you really rather not work with people, right? Do you like science classes or do you not like science classes, right? What are you good at, right? Where are your talents? Where are your skills? What things come easy to you? What things give you that sense of like flow, like where you're in it and it's just like, and it's just, you're just like having the best time ever. And then of course you also have to think about how long do you want to be in school or training, okay? Because that's going to have a big impact potentially on your career choices. So this is a really kind of busy graphic. I'm going to break it down for you a little bit. Oh, I have to stand here. All right. So on the y-axis, down towards the bottom are careers where you do a lot of procedural and technical skills. And then towards the top is where you have a lot of actual direct patient or client interaction, right? Where you're actually working with people who are awake as opposed to under anesthesia, right? And then the x-axis is how many years of training after your bachelor's degree you'd be looking at on average. And there are always exceptions and there are always different things, right? But this is something to think about. Do you like being in school? I loved school. Obviously, look, I'm still in school, right? I still work in a school. I love school, right? So for me, going to medical school was wonderful. Loved it, right? But maybe you don't love school. Not everybody does, and that's okay, right? Maybe you don't want to spend another 4 years in school if you don't need to. So these are some things to think about, right? So these are just some of the many health careers that are out there, right? And there's information on most, but not all of these in the Pre-Health Pathways Canvas site. And I'm working on getting all of them represented there. But any questions about these? Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of timeline. So a lot of you are underclassmen, so it's pretty salient to make sure that you get what you need when you need it. So a typical pre-health student timeline, right, is going to be in your freshman and sophomore years, you're focusing on getting your required coursework done, you're going to do some volunteering, and you're going to do some shadowing to get some exposure to different health careers, especially those that you think you're interested in. Then the summer after your sophomore year, you might look at, or even the summer after your freshman year, you might look at getting a CNA or an EMT certification, or something that then allows you to work in a paid capacity in healthcare, because at Stout we require you to do an internship, and it is hard in healthcare to get a paid job without a certification, right? So you can get a pharmacy tech job usually without any other certification, but most other jobs out there are going to require a CNA license or an EMT certification. So just something to keep in mind. Not everybody does that, but a lot of people do. And then your junior year is going to really be the big one. So your junior year, unless you're planning to take a gap year, you're going to finish the coursework that you need to take an entrance exam. So if you need to take an MCAT for med school, a PCAT for pharmacy school, an OAT for ophthalmology school, DAT for dental school, or we'll see what happens in the future, maybe the PA-CAT for PA school, and I'll talk about that in a second. You're probably going to take that exam the winter, spring, or summer, early summer after your junior year. So you want to be ready for that, and you're going to apply to schools the summer after your junior year. Then during your senior year, you'll do your interviews and finish your coursework. Okay. A lot of people take a gap year, right? So that can give you more time to take the courses that you need and or to get more clinical or healthcare experience or explore careers more. There's no detriment to taking a gap year as long as you do something meaningful with it, okay? So schools aren't going to look down on you for doing that. So it's the same kind of schedule as before, just everything shifted a year. So when you think about coursework and your timeline, you need to be able to take courses when you need them and be prepared for that entrance exam if you're going to need to take one. Okay. All right. So as a pre-health student, you have to deal with more requirements than most people. So most students just have to take that bottom right circle, the courses that are required for their major. But if you're a pre-health student, you also have to look at what are the prerequisites required for the schools to which you are applying. And the crazy thing is that depending on the schools, it might be very different from one to the other. So medical schools, for example, they're all over the place. Some require you take calculus, some don't. Some require you take organic chemistry, some don't. Some require biochem or psychology, some don't. They're all over the place. Most PT schools have a pretty solid, they're pretty consistent, they all kind of require the same prerequisite courses. PA schools are also all over the map. So it can be really tricky to figure out just what prerequisite courses you need to get into those schools. And then if you have to take an entrance exam like the MCAT, DAT, OAT, PCAT, or PA-CAT, you want to take the courses that are going to allow you to be really successful on that exam. Okay? So you have all these different things that are overlapping, right? But they're all different. So those two on the left, right, are the things that I can help you with. And the things on the right are what your academic advisor is going to help you with. And you're also going to check your advisement report, your program plan, and the Stout bulletin. That's how you're going to check on those. For schools, I have a lot of that information posted in the Canvas site. And then you're also going to want to double check the school websites. And then for your entrance exam, kind of same thing. So that's kind of my territory over here. And that's your advisors, academic advisors territory over there. All right, so I want to make sure many of you are upperclassmen, so you probably know this already, and hopefully this was covered in your program meetings. Where do you find information about courses? Right, so there's a couple different places. So Access Stout, and there's two important things I want to highlight for you in Access Stout. One is browsing courses, because if you browse by department, it'll tell you what semesters those courses are offered. Not every course is offered every semester, and you need to plan ahead for that. Also, that's where your advisement report is, which tells you how are you doing so far in terms of meeting the requirements for your degree. Some of you are like, yeah, I know this. The university bulletin is also where you can see your program requirements for your major, but you want to make sure that you select the year that you entered that program because it's different sometimes by year, as well as see course descriptions and any prerequisites for those courses. You can also usually find that information in Access Stout. And then, of course, a huge resource is other students, right? So that's why that meeting tonight will be awesome. All right, so some of the things that put a hitch in people's get along. So the biology department has a lot of courses that are only offered one semester out of the year, okay? So this is why I gave you the stapled handout of these slides so you can see, right? So some of the things that hang people up are certainly the biostats, right? A lot of those others are not required for a lot of the applied science majors, but might be something that you want to take anyhow. This isn't an all-inclusive list, right? Depending on your major, there are other courses for which they will only be offered one semester, but these are the big ones that tend to get people. Right now, our plan for the cadaver courses is that they're just going to be offered in the fall because we've had some decreased enrollment. So this fall, we're doing the advanced anatomy course where we use the already dissected cadavers. And then next fall, we'll do the cadaver dissection course where we start with new cadavers. So the difference between the two is 2 credits versus 3 credits, already dissected versus you dissect it, right? And so Monday, Wednesday versus Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The curriculum is identical, so you can't take both. You take one or the other if you're going to take one of those. If you're going to a school that requires 2 semesters of anatomy and physiology, which is a lot of PA schools and some of the others, we don't have a 2-semester anatomy and physiology course sequence here like a lot of other schools do, because we do things a little different. So at Stout, you're going to take Bio 234, which is Phys and Anat, and then you're going to take one of the cadaver courses, so you get 2 or 3 more credits of anatomy, and advanced physiology, which is Bio 362, so you get 3 more credits of physiology. And that will meet that 2-semester requirement of anatomy and physiology. Okay. All right. Biochem, man. So this is a tough one because it's only offered in the spring. And the reason why that's so tough is because there's basically 2 prerequisites for it. Right? So you have to take Chem 135 in order to take Chem 201, which is organic, and you have to take Chem 201 in order to take Chem 311, which is biochem. And then biochem is only offered in the spring, right? So if you're going to be taking an exam like the MCAT or the PCAT that has biochemistry on it, if you're planning to take that the winter or spring of your junior year, you really want to take Chem 311 the spring of your sophomore year, which means you're looking at taking Organic 1 the fall of your sophomore year. Unless you're going to take a gap year, which would be fine, okay? All right, so those are, and of course, Organic 1 is the prereq for Organic 2. In biology, right? So that Bio 135 is a huge gateway drug into all the biology courses, right? So hopefully all the freshmen are taking Bio 135, so you get that done, and so you have that solid foundation. Because then as you can see, that's the prerequisite for Bio 136, of course, which is then a prerequisite for a lot of these other courses, which are very popular with pre-health students. And Bio 135 is one of the potential prerequisites for Bio 234. There are others, but that's the most popular pathway people take. And then, of course, Bio 234 is the prerequisite for the advanced anatomy and physiology courses. So just plan for that, right? So don't leave Chem 135 until your junior year. It will create lots of problems. All right, questions about that?
Yeah. Can I take Bio 234 if I'm taking 135 now? Can I take it next semester?
Yep. Yep. Other questions? All right. So in the pre-health pathway Canvas course, right, there are modules for all the different careers. So check the prereq summary and see what entrance exams tend to be required for PT school versus dental school versus PA school and see what you need. Please don't do what many of your predecessors have done and said, well, I really want to take the exam winter of my junior year. I won't have taken physics yet, but I'll just teach myself physics and then take the MCAT. Please don't do that, right? You're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage, right? Those tests are expensive and they take a lot of time, right? So they're really resource intensive. So please also don't just be like, well, I'm just gonna not study and take the test and see how I do. I promise you, you will not do well enough and you will have wasted a lot of money, okay? The tests are hard and they require a lot of prep to do well, okay? I promise you, all the other pre-health students out there are prepping, okay? All right. So again, if you're not going to take a gap year, you're looking at taking your entrance exam either January or spring or early summer, like May, June of your junior year. The reason for that is because, so it's nice if you take it in winter or early spring and you don't score as highly as you need, you still have time to retake it before you decide whether or not you're going to actually apply that summer. Right? Because that summer before your senior year, for most, although not all, is when you're going to be putting your applications in. Right? So you don't want to spend a lot of money on applications if you end up with a low exam score that's going to derail your chances and make you not competitive. Question? Okay. All right, so you want to know your score before you put down a big chunk of change for your applications. Okay. This is kind of a spreadsheet of some of those entrance exams. So the MCAT is for med school, the GAT is for dental school, OAT is for ophthalmology or optometry school, PCAT is for pharmacy, and the PA-CAT is a new test that's being designed. It's still kind of in its testing phases now for PA school. So it's coming. It is not yet widely in use. Right? But in the next couple of years, it probably will be. So for those of you who are freshmen or maybe even sophomores, it might be important. There are just a few campuses that already require it, none of the ones kind of regionally. Most PA schools currently require either the GRE, as do most physical therapy schools, or no standardized test. So the GRE is the general grad school exam. So anybody who wants to go to grad school because they want to study calculus or sociology or go into physical therapy or whatever it may be, that you all take the same GRE. It's just one exam. There are 3 sections. There's a math part, there's a verbal reasoning part, and then there's an analytical writing part. Okay. So you might say, oh, I know how to do all those things. I don't need to study. Please, please, please study and prep. It makes a huge difference. And so all of those entrance exams have a lot of reading, right? So the GRE, absolutely, a ton of reading at a really high level, a lot of high-level vocabulary. All of the other standardized tests also have a reading comprehension component to them. And it's difficult reading, right? And I was talking with an alum last week, who right now is actually working at Mayo. He was part of working on their SARS vaccine, or their COVID vaccine, which is pretty exciting. But he's also, for fun, taking the immunology course at the med school there at Mayo while he's an employee there, which is a nice perk. And he was like, oh, it's totally different. You basically have to read the book and teach yourself. And I hear that a lot from our alums who go off to professional school, right? The expectation is different. Sometimes the professors are great and really good at explaining things, but a lot of times they're not, right? They're experts in what they do. They're not necessarily experts in teaching. So get good at reading. And how do you get good at reading? You read, and you read, and you read, okay? So the more reading you do now, and the more reading you do all along, the better you will be at it. Read, 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 read. All right, so that's your kind of course planning. Those are the things you need, and you need to read. What else do you need to do? So volunteer work is usually a big part of being a competitive applicant. Why? Most people who work in healthcare careers work pretty darn hard, right? And there will be days when doing the right thing for the patient means being late to your kid's recital or not getting home in time for dinner, right? So incumbent in being a healthcare provider is making sacrifices in your personal life for the good of other people. So if you have a history of volunteer work, it shows that you are a service-oriented person, right? Who is willing to give of your time and energy and talents to help other people. So volunteering is a really important part of your application. you need to know what you're getting into. So some type of clinical exposure or experience, right? So you need to, if you say, I want to be a physical therapist, right? They want to know that you've spent some time with physical therapists and you understand what that job is. Because by the time you go to a professional school, they're investing a lot of time and resources to train you to be that professional. They don't want you to drop out. And quite frankly, you can't afford to drop out because of all the loans you're going to have. Okay, so you need to be really sure that this is what you want to do. So they want to see that you understand what the career involves, right? That you're making a really well-informed decision. For PA school, because of how PA training is set up historically, you need to have a lot of clinical experience, paid healthcare experience. And I think the pre-PA folks in the room know that already. Academic excellence, right? You need to show you can learn really quickly, really complicated things. You can remember it. You can solve problems. So they want to see a really good GPA. If you've worked as a tutor or a TA, that looks excellent, right? Because that shows, one, that you were a really good student, and then two, that you've developed those skills to share information with others, which if you think about it, if you're working directly with patients, that's a lot of what you're doing, is educating them. This is what I think you have. This is why. These are the treatments I recommend. And the better you are at communicating information, the more successful a provider you will be. They also, so you have to be a really good student, and they also need to make sure that you can handle their curriculum, right? So they don't want to accept anybody unless they're really, really sure they're going to be able to finish, no problem. College is a little bit different if people drop out or transfer. But in professional schools, they don't want anybody dropping out. So they want to make absolutely sure that you're totally capable of the work. And then they're also looking for well-rounded people who are involved in their community, right? So that's where extracurricular activities, sometimes that's where your volunteerism comes in, hobbies and interests, right? They don't want people who are just science geeks. You have to be a science geek plus, right? So that you can relate well to people and, again, show your commitment to helping others. All right, questions about all of that? Yeah.
So I found out about this online volunteering option where you can be a blind person's eyes.
Oh, that's cool.
Through video, like help them see the expiry date of products and give directions.
Oh,
Is that something that
yeah.
can be quantified and shown?
Absolutely, absolutely, right? So that sounds like a really great thing to be able to do, especially in this day and age, right? Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, so you all have an advising checklist. So that's this single sheet. And so before you leave today, I'm going to ask you to take some minutes, right, to kind of go through. Did everybody get one? And think about, like, where are you in terms of, like, thinking about what you want to go into career-wise, right? And then what are your next steps, depending on where you are in that. And then there's kind of a scavenger hunt in terms of, like, I want to make sure that you can find a lot of the resources that are out there and navigate them. So you're going to need your laptops for that. Hopefully you brought yours if you didn't. You can do this at home. And then I'm just going to circulate around and help and answer any questions you might have and go from there.